Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 181. I'm Emily McDermott, and I'm here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. In your busy, overwhelmed mom life, have you ever thought to rest first? Probably not. It's a countercultural idea for sure, and we definitely don't get any of the gold stars for resting first. But in today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking to Courtney Carver. She's from Be More with Less and also the author of the new book, Gentle: Rest More, Stress Less, and Live the Life You Actually Want. And we talk about how we can start small, practice self-compassion, and give ourselves permission slips along the way to a gentler self, and how she was able to learn how to rest first, not after we've earned it, but right now. Courtney is, like I said, the creator of Be More with Less, and she's also part of the Simplicity Space, a membership program and community full of women who are reducing stress and simplifying life. She co-hosts a podcast called the Soul and Wit Podcast with her daughter Bailey, and she's the author of Soulful Simplicity, Project 333, and of course, her brand new book. So make sure you check out the show notes today with all of the helpful information all about Courtney. And without further ado, grab that notebook and pen, and let's dive into today's conversation with Courtney Carver. Hey there, Mama. Are you tired of all the stuff crowding your home, calendar, and mind? Do you wish you could say goodbye to the endless to-do list running around in your head? Want to declutter but don't know where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm, where you will find proven and practical solutions to declutter your home, head, and heart. Hi, I'm Emily, a wife, boy mom, and simplicity seeker. I struggled to get pregnant and felt overwhelmed until I discovered decluttering could create the physical and emotional space I needed to become a mom. Now, 2 kids later, I've transformed my life and motherhood by developing simple systems around decluttering, capsule wardrobes, kid stuff, cleaning and tidying, meal planning, time management, and more, and I can't wait to share them with you. If you're ready to reclaim the time and energy you crave, be present with your kids, and finally enjoy the life and motherhood you so deserve, let's kick overwhelm to the curb, shall we? Grab your lukewarm coffee, your notebook and pen, and clear off some counter space. Let's do this. Well, hi, Courtney. Thank you so much for coming on the Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, and I too am excited to talk with you.
Yeah, I had to check my notes. So I've been on this minimalist path almost a decade, 2014. And I know now, I double checked the first time I heard your name. It was in Everything That Remains, because I was taking Leo Babauta's
Okay.
Zen Habits course. He had like a monthly habits course,
Right.
and read Everything That Remains. You were mentioned, Joshua Becker, some other folks, probably like Tammy Strobel and Kate Flanders or something. And I was just like, what is this amazing world? So now it's been, a decade, and I've been on this path and sort of following along with you and your community and your books. And I'm just so excited to talk about your newest book, Gentle, today, because I feel like for the overwhelmed moms that are listening, we all need this book, but especially the overwhelmed moms. So before we dive in, I would love it if you could, in your own words, just kind of introduce yourself, tell us about you and your family, how you serve others, or women specifically, if you want to, and then what you like to do for fun. I would love to know that.
Sure. Well, I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'll just start with the fun part. In that I love getting out on our hiking trails and into our mountains. It's a really beautiful place for being outside. And I think, like my husband and I do our best connecting when we're out in nature. I love getting together with my daughter and her boyfriend to ski. And yes, that kind of leads to the family question, which is
Yeah.
I have a daughter. She's 29. Her name's Bailey. And we actually have a podcast together called Soul and Wit that we've slowed down on the recording. And now we're just doing occasional episodes. But we have, I think, about 4.5 years worth of really fun conversations out there. And then I'm married and have lived here for many years, but I'm originally from the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
And we all kind of started simplifying back in 2006.
Yeah,
Seems like
wow.
a really long time ago.
Yeah, wow. So I'm coming up on my 10 year, and you're almost, yeah, going to be coming up on your 20. And I know that just learning about you back when I did, that your diagnosis with MS was a really like pivotal moment as far
Mm,
as like you pursuing this path, and then of course your brand, be more with less. But also, for the sake of the book Gentle, I thought it was really interesting because I had heard your story before and would invite people to learn more about that story, or you can share, but that you said that you had to at that point change the way you changed, and I absolutely loved that. And I was hoping you could kind of talk about, like, up to that point, what did life look like? What did it feel like? And then what changed? How did you change the way that you changed going forward?
sure. So prior to my MS diagnosis, I would say that I was living on autopilot.
Mhm.
I was just living in this reactionary mode that I think a lot of us do to kind of get everything done and take care of everything we need to take care of and pay the bills and be there for our families and do our work. And it was, even though I recognize now that it was a lot and way too much, I didn't see that while I was in it. I thought this is just being an adult. We
Mhm.
just overdo it. We're always overwhelmed. We're always pushing through. And yes, there are a lot of great, happy moments in here, but we're also just tired the entire time. And when I got diagnosed with MS, it came on the heels of months of feeling really terrible. I mean, awful vertigo and fatigue, and just months of testing to figure out what was going on. And once I had that diagnosis, even though I had no idea what I was doing, I knew that I then had like the ultimate permission to take care of myself. And so it just set me on this journey of learning how people live well with MS. And I never intended to simplify my life. Even when I started to simplify my life, it was more that I was trying to reduce stress and get rid of as much stress as possible. And slowly but surely, I saw that these changes that I was making were all kind of rooted in simplifying. And when I say that I changed the way I change, what I mean is that prior to that, I had done plenty of habit changes and read
Mhm.
all the self-help books and tried to do the overnight success thing and do, you know, whatever you could in 20 days or less. Or it seemed like everything was kind of fast and
Yeah.
furious, and I wanted results immediately. And every book I read, if I wasn't able to maintain those changes, I felt terrible about myself and really bought into the idea that this is me, this is my problem. I'm the one who isn't disciplined enough, doesn't have enough willpower. And when it came time to change again, I would remember that and be like, well, what, you couldn't do it before. Like, what's going to be different this time? And when I started making the changes after my diagnosis, I decided I'm not going to change in a stressful way
Mhm.
anymore. And so now I'm going to try this like one thing at a time and not have a deadline and not have any extra pressure around it. Just see how it goes and how long it takes. And when it's time to start something new, I'll start something new. And that really worked for me. The other part of that was that within that like one thing, there were hundreds of tiny steps.
Mhm.
And I feel like before, all of my steps were so big because I wanted to prove to myself that I was strong and capable. And not to mention, I was way too busy to mess around with taking my time.
Mhm.
So taking tiny steps and acknowledging them and celebrating them and realizing that every change requires a lot of tiny steps was not only very successful in terms of habit change for me, but it was also so good for my nervous system. I just
Yeah.
felt good while I was making these changes instead of feeling like I was sacrificing or compromising myself to get where I wanted to go.
Yeah. I actually recently had a chance to talk to Kendra Adachi about her newest book about compassionate self-compassion and compassionate time management. And it's like we're surrounded by a culture that's saying like level up and 10x your results and crush your day and like all of this productivity, very toxic productivity language. And what I love is you are kind of saying, well, yeah, that's also similar with behavior change. Everything is like, okay, the 21-day reset, and we got to do this in this time frame. And then if we don't, then we feel like failures, like there's something wrong with us, that we messed it up. And so it seems to me, did you feel at the time that it was kind of this countercultural approach to being able to make changes? Because that's not really what the culture around us tells us. The culture around us is like, okay, we want to, make the changes, do it now. And how did you feel navigating that? Did that feel strange?
It felt strange to me for sure because I didn't know what I was doing and I wasn't sure what would happen, but I knew that even if it was a disaster, at least it was gentle and
Yeah.
I was taking care of myself in the way that I was changing. And then over the years, of course, I recognize that this isn't the typical go-to. I mean, we do want that immediate success and that, like, what's going to fix this thing right away? But I've yet to find that immediate, like one size fits all cure for
Yeah.
what ails us. And just in that slowing down, at least that removes some of the pressure to figuring it out.
Yeah. And I love the way that you structured the book where you have sort of these three stages. You have rest, less, and rise. And as I was reading the rest, I was thinking to myself initially, I wonder why she started with rest. And then I'm reading it and you're like, this is why I started with rest, because I wasn't going to, like, the prior me would be thinking, okay, we have to earn our rest, so that's going to be at the end. And I was really realizing, yes, we are hardwired to put rest last because this, Puritan work ethic, it's kind of like, okay, we're going to work hard. And that's kind of like, and some, people might think, oh, that's related to like godliness, like, okay, we're going to work hard to become closer to God or whatever. And then we'll rest at the end. And I love this quote that you have in the book because you mentioned overwhelmed moms. So, of course, I had to include it in our discussion. But you were saying our culture rewards hardworking ladder climbers, overwhelmed moms, anyone that goes above and beyond, really. First prize goes to those who literally work themselves to death. There's no prize for taking the best naps, resting regularly, or taking really good care of yourself. And I feel like that, especially for our overwhelmed moms, we're not getting the gold star for taking the nap. We're not getting the gold star for being like, yeah, I don't think I want to volunteer for this thing at the school. I think I just want to be able to take care of myself. So, can you explain to us why resting first is so important and how practically we do it? Because every part of our body is probably like, no, I have to keep going. I have to push through, not rest through, as you say in the book. So, can you tell us a little bit about why resting first is so important and how we can practically do that as overwhelmed moms?
Sure. I mean, like you said, we are hardwired not to rest. And I don't think many of us have had good role models for resting as we were growing up in our communities, certainly in our greater society. And what we probably have to do is redefine that gold star.
Mhm.
So instead of needing a gold star from someone else because of everything we've accomplished, I think that nourishing ourselves and feeling really good can be that gold star that we give to ourselves. We certainly all know how it feels after a night of sleep that lasts for 5 hours versus 8 hours, there's an immediate difference. There's no question about it. I mean, we just feel so much better and more tolerant of the things that come up in our day-to-day lives. So we know for a fact, I mean, there is also science, but we can just feel it, that it is better to sleep well and to rest regularly. But even my current self experiences that pushback. Like when I was writing the book, I at first wasn't going to put rest as the first section. And then I thought, you're doing the thing where you save rest for later. But what would happen if you rested first? If you didn't wait until you were exhausted or sick? I mean, that is when we rest. Like, oh, I can't possibly take another step. I think I'm going to rest now. But by prioritizing that rest, you're telling your body, your heart, I care about you. I am going to take care of you, even if it's for 5 minutes at first. And of course, there's different stages of life where it is harder to carve that time out. But if we think about the time that we lose by burning ourselves out, that then we figure it out and rest because we can't do anything else. But could potentially we avoid that altogether just by consistently resting, by taking some things off of our plate, by not pushing through, by easing through instead? I think there is, and it has to start small because we are breaking down a lot of programming and a lot of, especially women who are doing everything all the time, breaking those societal messages. And that's hard for us to do. And it's worth it.
Yeah.
So start small, start tiny. I suggest even if you just schedule 5 minutes a day, that is like your time. And you don't have to get in bed and lay down. People rest in lots of different ways. So whatever feels restful to you for a few minutes every day, try it. And if the 5 minutes feels okay, next week try 6 minutes and then 7 minutes and see what happens.
Yeah, I love throughout the book you have lots of different suggestions. So it's not like this one size fits all type of thing, but also that there's like these, tiny steps, and then you have, your one gentle step, and then the permission slips. I love the permission slips.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, so sometimes I say people look to me for like decluttering permission slips, and I'm like, okay, here's your permission slip. If you feel like you really need it, here you go. But I think that's great because we do sometimes need somebody to tell us, like, it's okay. Like, no, really, like, it's okay. And I want to just mention that when it comes to rest, at least in my life and my motherhood, especially in the more difficult stages when my kids were smaller, my idea of rest was more of a distraction or an escape. So it would be my phone, it would be perhaps alcohol, like that would be the rest. But I think it's important, maybe you can just touch on it briefly about the difference between rest that is actually like restorative versus, oh, I'm taking a break and I'm going to take my break by scrolling whatever. So, or
Right.
whatever that might be. How has that looked for you? Like, has your idea of rest changed at all from more of that distraction coping to more of a restorative kind of rest?
For sure it has. And I think it's because I'm taking the time to ask myself, does this feel restful or do I feel more stressed? I mean, if I scroll Instagram for a half hour, do I feel rested and relaxed or do I feel a little ragey?
Yeah.
Usually it's a little ragey. So it's really understanding that what makes you feel good. I mean, I can watch half an episode of Gilmore Girls and feel pretty relaxed and rested. I can read a little while. I can just lay down and close my eyes. I can sit outside in the sunshine. Those type of things really do work for me. But the distracting and the numbing,
Mhm.
I think that just delays the need for that real restorative rest.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's something we, like you said, asking yourself, And even if you do a certain activity and after that activity, asking yourself, was that actually restful for me? Because a lot of times we're just, right, we're on to the next thing. And there's not so much that reflection. So I think that that's great because throughout the book, you're saying, okay, try this out, see if it works. And if it does, then reflect on it. And then maybe, like you said, you go from the 5 minute rest to the 6 minute rest. We're not overhauling everything in our lives. We're just making those small changes.
Right. I mean, it's this big experiment, this life thing that we're doing, and we all feel different by doing different things. And we have to figure out what works best for us and not expect to be able to conform to what works best for anyone else,
Mhm,
not whoever wrote the book that you're reading right now, not your parents, not your friends.
mhm.
What works best for you? And if we're building in slowly but surely a little margin in our lives, we'll have some time to answer that question and to ask it and to listen and to see what we need to shift to feel better. I mean, it's a real gift to do that for yourself.
Yeah, and I think you talk in the book somewhat about, margin, and we talk a lot about capacity here. And
Mm.
that's why when I was reading about, and this was not actually in the rest section, but about spoon theory, which I have heard of because I have some friends that have chronic illnesses, but just understanding like that there are people, for whatever reason, their energy might be compromised for some reason. It could be a chronic illness. It could be that you have a newborn. It could be for a variety of reasons. But knowing like the way that we approach rest and how productive we are or want to be or how we sort of treat ourselves in the process, we can look at this spoon theory, and it's a real kind of tactical way of thinking about it. Can you explain what that is and kind of how it factors into this conversation of rest?
Sure. Well, it's kind of like we measure our time by hours and we
Mhm,
measure our money by dollars, and we don't measure our energy at all.
mhm,
We don't have a way to do that. And so I just wrote her name down because her
mhm.
last name's a little hard to
Yeah.
pronounce, but Christine Miserandino.
Mhm.
Wow, I hope I said that right. She is the woman that created this idea of spoon theory, and she has lupus, and she was explaining to a friend essentially that we don't all have the same amount of energy. Yes, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, but not really, because depending on, like you said, if you're home with a newborn,
Mhm,
you have less energy and less energy availability. If you have chronic illness, you do as well. There are lots of different reasons and stages of life where this will change, but being mindful of it is, I think, really important. And so, spoon theory assigns spoons as units of energy. And so, let's say you have 12 spoons in a day and it costs you 2 spoons to make breakfast and do the dishes and put them away. Then you have 10 spoons left. And it's not that there's an accurate measurement here for each spoon.
mhm,
It's you assigning that value so that you can kind of see what you're doing. And it's kind of like when you finish your to-do list, do you stop doing things? No, then you add more things on.
mhm,
And if you were paying attention to your energy, perhaps you would cut your to-do list in half. So just really understanding where you are, how you feel, what you are available for, and that maybe you don't have to fill every waking moment with doing
yeah,
things. I find it really helpful to make a weekly to-do list instead of a daily to-do list. And when my weekly list is done, I'm not running around looking to add more things to that
mhm.
list. It's finished. We're done.
Yeah, I think that also, given social media and just the ability for us to compare ourselves to others more easily. Doesn't have to be social media, but that's a big part of it. We see everyone else, and when we compare, it's not the same because everyone has that different energy level and capacity level. And I think you had in the book, I've heard, oh, Beyonce, Oprah, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, which really bothers me because it's like, well, yes, but number one, they have people that help them. And number two, it's like we're all coming from a different place. So before we have sort of that shame or like, why can't I get it together? Why can't I get this done? And the pushing through, just being able to say, I have a more limited energy reserve right now, and that's okay, to like be able to give ourselves that self-compassion and grace. And I feel like, especially, coming out of the holiday season, like it's just the frenzy of like, what's everyone doing? Did I do that? Am I giving my kids the best experiences? Like, am I making memories? Like, I feel like, especially as moms, we put pressure on ourselves to always be making the memories with our kids all the time. And spoon theory is like, okay, but I did this, this, and this, and I only have 3 spoons left. So we're going to order pizza tonight.
Right.
you
We're
know?
gonna order pizza, watch a movie, and chill out tonight. It's so interesting. I mean, uh, on top of all that pressure, we also put this pressure on ourselves to do our best or do it
Mhm.
all or do the most or be the best. And to what end, I would ask, like,
Yeah.
what is the purpose of that? I say, don't give your all. Like, save some for you. Save some of that all for you. It's so important.
Yeah, I think for me, when I hear that, I immediately go back to the perfectionism that has totally plagued me, and like wanting to get A's on all the tests, and the gold stars and all the things I mentioned. And I didn't really see that until recently as a sign of, hey, you're going to burn out if you keep doing that. I saw that as, oh, well, I have to always, like you said, give it my all, give it my best for everything. And just to have that grace. And again, this kind of goes into my next thing about the permission slips. Like, someone like you, Courtney, that I admire so much, and you've sort of been in my life and in my ear and reading for 10 years, and then you're like, Emily, it's okay. You don't have to give your best. And I just need somebody that I care about and trust to tell me that. Do you know what I mean? Because we don't give the permission slips to ourselves very often, right?
Right. But if we practice asking for them, then eventually
Mhm.
we can, as we're learning to trust ourselves, we can not only give them to ourselves, but to the people we love.
Yeah.
So I think it's really an important, like, pay it forward
Mhm.
process, uh, especially when you get to a point that you really trust that you know what's best for you. You will hand those permission slips out to yourself with ease.
Yeah, I'm still getting there.
Hey, that's fair. I mean, I think we all are. And
Yeah.
it's just something that by reinforcing it with kind of that term, it's just helpful to know that it doesn't have to be more overwhelming.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be
definitely.
another task.
Exactly. And one thing I noticed as I was reading the book, when you have the permission slips after each chapter, I believe, in each section, most of them are 1 to 2 sentences. And then there was one that was like this paragraph. It was a super long one, and it was having to do about prioritizing what you call the gentle you, which is kind of what we're kind of moving towards. I won't say that we're trying to get to, but we're moving towards. And that's the making ourselves the priority in our own lives. And it's the permission slip for being able to do that, like essentially prioritizing this and being able to give ourselves these permission slips. But like, why is this so hard? Like, why do we feel so guilty? And okay, we finally get through that weekly to-do list, and then we try to find more stuff to do. Like, do you have any insights from your own life about kind of that resistance and how you've been working through it? Because I know you back before 2006, it was more kind of like fast pace, um, corporate world, I believe, and kind of
Yes.
overachievement and everything. And that's a huge shift to be able to say, no, I'm going to prioritize myself. And this is the permission slip I'm giving myself. So How do we get there? That's what I'm asking.
Tiny steps for
Yeah.
sure. It does come back to that learning how to trust yourself.
Mhm.
And I think one tangible way to look at it is like, think about the advice you would give to a dear friend about resting or relaxing or prioritizing themselves or taking care of themselves, giving that to someone you love, and then thinking about yourself as someone who you love. If not you, then who? I mean,
Yeah.
it's really so beneficial to the people around you, even though that is not the point here. But it does really help you to connect with that, to be able to say, I'm putting myself on the top of the list.
Mhm.
Or at some point, after I've been putting myself on the list for years and years, now I know I just come first and I'll do the things I need to do first thing. And of course, there are going to be situations that come up that you just have to throw all of that away
Yeah.
and rush in. I'm not denying that life is going to happen. However, if you're prioritizing yourself on a regular basis, when those surprises and emergencies come up, you are better equipped to be there. Um, but to answer your question about how do we do it, it really is a process and a noticing of how you haven't been on the list for a really long time and you've probably dismissed your needs. Even little things like on a day to day basis, when you think to yourself, I'm thirsty, but instead of going to get a glass of water, you do five other
Yeah.
things for other people first. When you're thirsty, go get a drink of water. Um, if you're hungry, eat something. It's these very basic, like answering your own needs.
Mhm.
But the only way to hear those needs is to listen. And that takes a little bit of space. So that's kind of where that season of less comes in making space
Yeah.
to be able to hear what you need.
Yeah. Like listening and then noticing and then being able to say, okay, what, like what do I need right now? And I feel like we don't ask ourselves that. Also, for me, I mentioned this before we hit record that I'm finding like, okay, well, if I don't do this, no one's going to do it for me. I could be getting a gift certificate for, I have like this gift certificate for a massage that's going to expire in a month. I'm like, no one else is going to make the call to like do that.
Right.
But and so, but then it's like, oh well, I don't know. I have to go do whatever is the urgent and the maybe the kids' school is going to call that day and they'll be sick. Like I come up with all these excuses instead of just saying, no, it's okay. Like you can actually prioritize yourself, prioritize the care of yourself, and then be able to move in that direction. So I agree with you. It's definitely a process, but I love you give so many helpful suggestions and then you remind us maybe just pick one and do one small thing from that. It's not I'm going to give you 100 suggestions and you have, 100 days to complete everything. It's a very gentle approach with how you're making those recommendations, which I love.
Yeah. And you don't have to wait until everything is perfect or quiet or anything else in your life. I mean, when does that ever really happen? That just everything's aligned and you have all this room for taking care of yourself. You have to start somewhere. And
Mhm.
sometimes the best place to start is in the midst of chaos or the midst of a mess or the midst of really um, big feelings. Like why not now?
Yeah.
Why not now? Like, I hope as soon as we hang up from this call that you'll schedule that massage
I
before it
will. I
expires.
will. Yes, and that's something so helpful and the permission slips, but then also having like trusted people in your life that you can be accountable to. We have business coaches if you have your own business, or you have these different kind of coaches and people in your ear, kind of giving you guidance. Like we should have self-care coaches or like people that we trust, accountability buddies for that kind of thing. And so I love that because that is one of your gentle part of that three-step framework is having that support. And I feel like that's incredibly important. Can you just mention as we're wrapping up, like who have been the main supports for you as far as like being able to follow this path of gentle? Like who's been able to support you to be like, okay, Courtney, you got to schedule that massage, for example.
Well, I mean, as women, we have to root for each other and be
Mhm.
there for each other and be giving each other permission and celebrations and love, whatever we need. We're the only ones who know what it's like to be us.
Mhm.
And in my life, I mean, certainly my daughter and my sister, who is my dear friend. I have other very close friends who we're often reminding each other of this because though I may have written an entire book about being gentle, I'm human and I will forget on a day-to-day basis and have to be reminded. And so if I'm on the phone and I'm talking about something that feels overwhelming, a friend might say, are you open to advice? Or what can I do to help? Or do you just want to vent here? Or
Mhm.
maybe this is a good time to get off social media or just to rest. And that kind of those kind of gentle discussions are so helpful. And it never, I don't think you ever get to this place where now you've perfected life and you're the perfect human. I mean, if you know anyone out there like that, I'd love to have a chat with them. But maybe that's not the goal. Maybe the gold star isn't the goal. Like, what's so great about that? Maybe it's just how we feel and how we treat each other, and that can be enough.
Yeah, very well said. Oh, thank you so much, Courtney. This has been such a pleasure talking with you. And like I said, I've been admiring you for a while from afar and reading your books. And I will link to all of those in the show notes so people can check them out. But how would you like to connect with my audience and where can they go if they want to learn more about you and the book and all the things?
Sure. Well, the book is available everywhere. And I think that's a great start and
Mhm.
introduction to me and my work, and hopefully to big changes with tiny steps in your life. I also write really frequently on my site, bemorewithless.com. So if you want to subscribe over there, I have some good stuff for you. And then if you are on social media, I'm generally mostly on Instagram at Be More
Okay.
with Less.
Wonderful. Well, I will link to all of those things in the show notes. And again, thank you so much, Courtney. I really appreciate your time, and it's been such a great conversation.
I agree. Thank you so much for having me.
If you like today's podcast, here's what you can do. Just take 30 seconds to leave me a review. I know you're a busy mama, you're overwhelmed, in fact, but 30 seconds of your day makes such an impact. I'll be blessed by your words, they'll definitely make my day. And who knows, you might be entered for this month's giveaway. In Apple Podcasts, scroll down to write a review. Thanks so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you.